Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Per My Last Email panel today. My name is Javers, but you can also call me Jay, and I'll be moderating this panel along with these three lovely melanated professionals who I'll allow to introduce themselves shortly. Just want to set some intentions for today, each of our origin stories and how we got our feet in the door of PR and comms, and what it took to secure and succeed in our first entry-level positions, as well as the skill sets we developed and sharpened to pivot from those humble beginnings on top levels of individual contributors, as well as people managers, as well as the future of PR Marcoms, and any advice on how to frame your experience and skill sets and really bringing your whole self to work in order to advance your goals. So hopefully we grab a few nuggets today. So I'll give you a brief background of myself and really why I'm so excited to facilitate this conversation today with everyone. I myself am a Southern gentleman or a country boy from Alabama, but I was raised in Florida. And I don't think I ever dreamed of being where I am today. I got my first chance in entertainment about 10 years ago exactly here in Hollywood, Los Angeles, at a marketing agency working in entertainment. And my official title when I started was publicity and promotions coordinator. And I worked on film and TV campaigns mostly. But before I got all of that, I got my first PR internship through some relationships, really a friend, while I was studying for my degree in hospitality. That internship gave me the experience in event management, copywriting, publicity placement, social media, you name it. And really, that title transitioned over the next 10 years, everything from junior publicist to social media manager to influencer marketing manager and talent manager to my current post as head of influencer and strategy. And over the next 30 minutes, I'll unpack a bit of that. But what's more exciting is that you'll get to hear real life experiences, key learning lessons, and also have a chance to ask some questions. But before we move any further, allow me to introduce our esteemed panelists. First up, we have a true California native and USC Annenberg graduate. She is the VP of Multicultural Media at the Zeno Group. Please meet Bree Jones.
Hey everyone, nice to be here this morning and connect with everyone. As Jay mentioned, I am a multicultural media maven, if you will, having done that for my entire career trajectory for the most part. I got my first start out in PR in 2012, straight out of undergrad, and since then have been working against the clock to really execute important campaigns to reach multicultural audiences, namely African Americans. So it's always great to connect with my contemporaries and talk with you all.
Thanks for joining us. And next up, we have a Houston, Texas native and proud graduate of Texas Southern University from the School of Communications. He received his degree in public relations and has recently joined STARS as the director of publicity. Please meet Joseph Williams.
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to see you today. Thank you for joining. Can't wait to dive in with this amazing group.
Awesome, awesome. Glad to have you. And last but certainly not least, hailing from Prince George's County, Maryland, and a proud graduate of Georgia State University, he currently leads multicultural community engagement at Netflix. Please meet Kevin Stuckey.
Hi, everyone. Excited for this conversation. Good to see you all.
All right. So now that we got that out the way, let's jump right in. Now, I know you all are some very accomplished folks, and those titles only begin to describe your excellence, but we all have an origin story or a place that we began. And although sometimes we forget, no one person's path is the same, right? I'd like to take a look back to your college years, right before the professional journey began. A lot of us began with an internship, some didn't, some had a form of the on-the-job experience. But I want to ask you all, can you tell me about those very early days and how you got your start or your foot in the PR industry? And we'll start with Bree.
Sorry, gave a preview earlier. Yes, so me entering the PR industry. So as I mentioned, I was blessed and fortunate to study PR at Annenberg as an undergrad, which is USC's PR and journalism school. So hop right into the practice. And then upon graduating, got a job at one of LA's top, if you will, multicultural marketing PR agency. So that was really exciting to get my feet wet and work across like amazing brands, TV film campaigns, talent, touching both sides of the industry to really see if I liked entertainment or more brand work. But where I was kind of the convergence of both. So as a fresh out of college, looking for jobs, this was a great way for me to really understand the industry, and where I was gave me a great introduction to that, very hands-on. And it was really great to see the possibilities, because you don't know really what PR is about until you do it in real life. I mean, I will say that schools try to prep you, but there's nothing like that real life experience. And prior to getting my first full-time gig, I did intern at Interscope Records, a smaller PR fashion firm, but so really getting kind of an understanding, but I knew that my heart wanted to lean more entertainment. So getting into that, touching the different verticals between music, TV, film, like I just mentioned, it was really exciting. And just seeing that it was such a calling and such a clamor to really talk to Black consumers and Black audiences, which in school you didn't really get to understand that, but understanding like our influence and really be able to touch campaigns to reach us and really connect with us was really important to me. And I was so happy to be a part of those conversations and help to cultivate that. So that was my like fresh out of college, just jumping right in, and then just like leading into my career into where I am now. So that's kind of my beginning steps.
Love that. Love that. And tell us a little bit about the day-to-day work and how it differed from your expectations in that first role.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a lot goes beyond. I mean, my first job was a PR coordinator, and it was not just fetching coffee and making copies and running errands for my boss. And I mean, there were a few administrative tasks, but I was really happy that I was able to really see like what went into a pitch, what went into a press release, like what that meant, what building a strategic media list looks like. And even at my big age now, and like being in the industry for like over 10 years, it's like media lists, it's still a task, right? So like building those blocks to understanding the fundamentals of PR was really important. And that day to day was built on that, like shadowing the publicists who I would be assisting, or sitting in these PR meetings, taking copious notes and trying to understand like how things worked and how campaigns were structured. So I really was a sponge in my first, my first starting out in my career. But then at the place where I was really able to be part of the conversation. It wasn't just like, okay, Bree, you're taking notes, but I was able to take notes and also like send pitches and also invite media to attend these events that I was working on. So seeing it come together and being part of that and having hands-on was really great. Having hands-on experience was really great. So that was kind of my beginning, if you will.
Love that. Sounds like you got some great experience coming out the gate. Joseph, tell us, was it like that for you? What was your start like, getting your foot in the industry, and how did that work, that day-to-day work at your first post, kind of differ from what you expected?
I would say things differed a lot more because my first role was a hybrid. It was marketing and PR for the Houston Dynamo out of college. That was probably the best experience, though, because as I look at my career, I've been able to understand publicity's contribution to marketing and marketing's contribution to publicity. And so in a lot of the roles, like Bree talked about going to an agency, it was super helpful to be able to understand a 360 campaign. So, your experiential, your publicity, talent relations portion, all those things kind of blend when you're doing a Marcom role. And that first role was as an assistant. So it was, creating pitches for the Houston Dynamo players. It was helping create our weekly game guide that you get, when you go to a sporting event. It was doing media training. It was working the press box during the soccer matches. So it was a lot of that. And then I got poached to work in the oil and gas industry in another Marcom role before I ended up making my way to LA to work in entertainment full time. So that's a little bit of my origin story.
I love that. It sounds like you guys were off to a great start. Now, Kevin, was it that easy for you? Tell us a little bit about your origin story and those that transition kind of from Georgia State University to your first role. What was that like, and how did that work kind of differ from your expectations?
Well, one thing I'll say, my transition was a little non-traditional in my sense. I was in school in Georgia State. I actually majored in PR as well. And then the 2008 recession hit right as I was graduating. And so a lot of the plans that I had, I was hoping to be able to go to New York for this paid internship with Liz Claiborne Brands, was not extended that internship that summer. So I ended up back in retail working for BCBG for another year, and really kind of having to reassess my plan and figure out, okay, what am I going to do to make that transition? And through that time, I connected with a friend of mine who was a stylist, and I asked them to list out for me like all the top fashion PR agencies that they worked with in New York, so that I can just really start reaching out and seeing what other internships that might be available on the agency side instead of on the brand side, hoping that, maybe there was an unpaid internship I can get or something I can get to really get my foot in the door, specifically working in New York. And that led to my first unpaid internship at Harrison and Schriftman for the summer of 2009, excuse me, summer of 2009. And thankfully, after I completed that summer internship, that turned into a full-time PR coordinator role, which was, I was there out in New York on a wing and a prayer, working part-time at Bloomingdale's, trying to make ends meet. But I'm so grateful for that unpaid internship experience as someone that was post-grad, because it allowed me to get the skills and get in the door so people could see my value at the time. And it led into a full-time role. So that was really exciting. And that role was a fashion PR coordinator, where I got to do everything from, like Bree mentioned, to building lists. In fashion, we're very hands-on with samples. So it was a lot of moving samples from our showroom to editors and stylists in the industry, preparing for fashion shows, spring previews, things of that nature. So a lot of sample trafficking, as well as a lot of like foundational PR work, and really just getting our team, whatever our team really needed for new business pitches, or just any overall media stories they were telling. We were the kind of the front lines. I remember having to get to the office early before my PR director got into work, just to have the clips on her desk and make sure like everything that had ran previously was already in the report, scanned and copied and all of those things. And so it really taught me a lot of discipline about getting up early, getting there before my team got going, and really being the foundation of a PR team.
I love that. I love that. And it sounds like through the variety of different origin stories, right? Whether you majored in PR or hospitality like myself, there was a way to get in, and not one right way, but just a right way for you. I think one of the more fascinating things to witness in this last decade or so has been really the diversification of what comms and PR or public relations means, right? And to whom, particularly with the expansion of social media and really advancing technology. Not only has this created new positions that never really existed before, but also changed the needs and sometimes the titles of some of these traditional positions. I want you guys to talk to us a little bit about your personal and professional evolution from the more traditional PR com beginnings to your current post, and some of the personal skill sets you had to further learn, develop, or sharpen, really in order to adjust to those roles positions. Joe, we'll start with you for this one.
That's a really good question. When I think back to when I started my internships in college, I interned with the Greater Houston Chamber of Commerce, which basically helps Black-owned businesses grow their business. And so basically, I was a comms resource to the folks who didn't have a resource, who were members of the chamber. And so I learned really early to listen, to take copious notes, because every business is different. Every business's positioning statement or opportunity is different, and also their goals are different. And so it also helped me to be thoughtful when I craft a strategy, or I'm thinking about tactics, or even the press that I want to go after or engage for a campaign. So those are skills that I learned early there. And then when I graduated and I was working with the Houston Dynamo, I also decided I really wanted to work in entertainment and not just sports. So I had to be more enterprising. I had to go out and find opportunities. And so I didn't know it at the time, but I was creating a field publicity agency that I was working on campaigns in market in Houston. And so that was finding the press who would cover the different films or cultural topics, creating my own list from scratch. I think Kevin and Brebo talk about those things that you have to do early on in your career. When you're starting your own business, you are the assistant, you are the manager, you are handling the finances, you are doing the social media, you are doing the website marketing, all of those things. And so all of those things are what I've carried forth with me at each stop. And I don't know that I don't use any of them today, because at times I might have to, teach a coordinator or an assistant today, like, hey, here's some things you can do to help yourself and the team. And so those are things I think about as I like matriculated through my career, carrying all of those things with me to the next stop. I hope I answered your question.
You did. And I think you did a great job at really expressing, I think, the thing that we all take with us, which are the early on learning blocks that really, kind of cultivate who we are and what will show up in our work. And so I think that makes perfect sense. Kevin, I'll turn it to you. Tell us a little bit about some of those personal skill sets that you had to kind of further learn or sharpen, really to adjust to these roles that you were starting to go on to receive earlier on in your career.
I'll say the biggest, biggest thing for me was to stay open, and really being able to seize the opportunity of roles that aren't super defined or are so new that like you have a chance to shape them. So I transitioned from fashion PR in New York to entertainment in LA. And it was a big part of that transition was realizing like, what are the transferable skills? Right now, you're talking about a new product, a new industry, but there are still certain fundamentals that can come with you. Every industry has a trade publication, right? Like when I was in fashion, it was Women's Wear Daily. When I came to film and TV, it was now Hollywood Reporter and Variety. So like some of that training I used to kind of like help me pivot. But most of the roles I got after that were always like either no one had been in them before for a long time before that, or they were completely new and people were trying to like build a department or something of that nature. So I think I started to learn the opportunity of just really being confident in what you have, but being open to something that's new, something that's more. And I did that from, being at Gen Art, where I was able to like plan a film festival and build out this film screening program with this company that went around the country to, coming to Allied Global Marketing, I think it's called now. And really being in two departments at the same time, their national publicity department, but also helping them build this emerging department at the time, which really had about, I think, 1.5 employees, which was Allied Moxie, which is now a full-blown division. And that was all because I was saying yes to these kind of like undefined, not quite clear kind of roles. But it just gave me a lot of opportunity to build up capacity and build up skill sets for myself.
I love that. Something about saying yes, right? That really starts the ball rolling. Bree, would you share with us a little bit about what that kind of personal and professional evolution has looked like for you over your PR career and some of the skill sets that you've had to kind of sharpen or develop to keep going?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things is understanding that PR is just the evolution, and like you just have to kind of know a lot of things about a lot of things. So basically, like between influencer marketing, social media, like it's now becoming so connected. And in order to really do our jobs as PR professionals, like understanding how it's moving from more of a linear sense to more of just being just out of the box. It's just so many different aspects and avenues to how to build a campaign these days versus back in the day when I started, it was just, okay, you pitch these 5 people, they cover your story and boom. But now in today's challenging media landscape, you have to be a lot more scrappy, a lot more creative, a lot more resourceful, tapping into your teams. Everyone's asking for how was this campaign cohesive? How was it integrated? So leaning on your cohorts and your IAT, if you will, to really understand how to make a campaign come together. And I think that's the beauty of what we do, because we wear so many different hats. So I feel like every time I progress in my career, I'm learning what a new hat feels like, looks like, sounds like. And I think that's really important to help keep myself up on game as we continue to grow, or as I continue to grow. So I feel like just being flexible, being nimble, being open, constantly educating yourself. And on a personal tip, it's giving yourself grace. I know we might not be talking about that right now, about like just like personal side of things, but due to the fast-paced sense of things like TikTok and all these other things that are happening, I think, again, give us understanding to give yourself the time to sit and understand these aspects, ask younger people what's going on, to see like how you can lean into these audiences, because as PR people, our job is to constantly engage the masses, and the masses are constantly changing, and especially depending on your target demo. So again, just staying up on what's going on the latest, talking, like just seeing how much the internet has grown and social media and your shade rooms and all of that being like your top contenders of like what you want to get your client into versus a traditional media outlet, right? Like even that has changed drastically since I've started. So I would say those are the kind of the biggest things, is the hats and just constantly remaining educated and keeping your ear to the ground on the latest trends is really important, and what I try to pride myself on doing.
I love that. And that reminds me that it's a special time. I want to give each of you a moment to think about a gem, a piece of advice, because the question is going to be, what's something you wish you knew or could potentially go back and change before you graduated college? I think you all have done a great job of really communicating what those transitions looked like and kind of, what you've gathered. But if you could go back, right? And whether or not it was just something you wish you knew, something you strengthened, or even something you changed about your trajectory, what is one of those things? And Bree, I'll kick it back to you, because I think you were really just telling us a good understanding of where it's come. But if you could go back, if you could change something, or if you could just kind of, bring something new with you, what would that be? What's that gem you can give to some of us who are still getting there?
I'm still getting there myself, child. Just kidding. Trying to think of a gem. I think actually, Kevin, I think I'm going to steal from something you told me like a minute ago, like a long time ago, actually, when I was talking to you about something. We had a sidebar on a campaign when I was like working with you. I think a lot of us are building the plane as we fly it in some cases, right? And I think that back to my grace point, because I want to add some of this humanity aspect into PR and what we do, because a lot of what we do, I mean, sometimes we're like masochists, right? Like this is not an easy trade, right? I know some of us, I mean, Jay, I know you're an influencer, but it's all like this industry, right? It's really just like, I would say, take your time, Bree. That's what I would probably say. And you're not perfect. You're going to make mistakes. And I just think establishing a mentor or someone to soundboard, to have your back when in those moments of darkness, I think is very vital. I still lean on my village, right? And, I've always worked on the agency side. So like, I think, again, back to Kevin, like, I know we're working together on a campaign, you were my client, but it's like taking those moments to be like, okay, hold on, let's pull the curtain back. You have 5 minutes, like, let's talk this through, right? And I think leaning on that and building those relationships to like, just know that we're all in this together, client or, the other side of things, it's always important. So I would say it's a mixture of those things. Take your time, give yourself some grace, and you're going to figure it out. Like it always all works out. Even in the worst of crises, it's going to work out. So I think that's my gem.
Love that. Love that. Joe, give me a gem. What's something we can take away from your journey?
Oh my God. I would actually give you three.
Okay.
And so the first thing to kind of piggyback off the humanity of what Bree is talking about is be kind to yourself. Be kind to your colleagues, be kind to your partners. Um, if for no other reason, you want to have a great experience working very closely with these folks. And when you establish a certain rapport, you can get the best out of yourself, out of your colleagues, out of the campaign. And this business is cyclical, so that's another part of that. So who you is your assistant today may be your boss in 10 years. Who is your client today could be your business partner tomorrow. And so those are things to think about. The next one would be to be thoughtful. Something that, as I was exiting OWN that stood out to me was my colleagues acknowledging how thoughtful I was on my campaign. And I didn't think anybody really noticed because I cared about the demo a lot. It's Black women, my mom, my grandmother, my sister come to mind, my aunts, and, my cousins, my nieces, my goddaughter. And so like all of those things, have helped me throughout my career. And then the last one is to be complete, was something that I learned working at agencies. When you think about your work and what you're doing, think about it from beginning to end, and then go back and see if there's anything you missed. Like, I don't think you can ever have a perfect campaign, but you do your best at each step of the way. And that looks different at each phase of your career. What I thought was a great campaign as an assistant looks different as a director. And it'll probably change if I make it to a VP or if I make it to a network president or whatever. And so just being, really thoughtful and complete with your work is so important.
Ooh, love that, love that, love that. Kevin, what you got for us?
I was thinking about this a lot. I love both what Bree and Joe shared. I think one of the things that's coming up for me is really a spirit of service. I remember being in my internship and staying late and taking the FedEx packages down to like the mail room at the end of the night, just by being the last one there, right? And a part of that for me was just really making sure that like the managers or the publicists that was still there and working, like even though my internship hours were over, I wanted to still make sure I was able to serve and be available to serve. And that spirit has really went with me throughout my whole journey, even as my titles and levels have climbed. I'm always thinking about how I can serve my managers, serve the people around me. And now as a leader, thinking about how I can serve the people that report into me. I think that's a big responsibility to be a servant leader, to really, really make sure that you are making space and thinking about what it is that your people need. Bree talked about grace. I think a lot of that grace comes from having a manager that is taking care of your own self in a way that you can actually pour into others, that you can clarify things in a way for someone so they aren't spending 50 hours at work every week. And so I still try to keep that spirit of service, even in the journey, even where I am at now, because I think it's super important. Another thing that's super important, I think, is that work begets more work. I heard this on a panel recently I attended called Hollywood Confidential, and one of the actors was talking about, you stay with the work, and the work continues to lead to more work. And so sometimes I think whether it's something you can just volunteer for, whether it's, raise your hand, join something, do something, because when it's moving, that's when you're most likely to find the next thing. And so continue to stay in the work, find the work that you enjoy doing, but definitely raise your hand, volunteer, be a part of the work. And I think that just continues to lead to more opportunities.
Absolutely love that. I'm hearing the flow. I love the idea of, to your point, work begets work, and kind of staying abreast and in the flow of what's going on. And it reminds us that I think as more brands and marketing agencies really realize the importance of the new media, right? When we talk about social media or the digital ecosphere, people are seeking ways to reach new audiences or consumers. And so I'll pose this last question to you guys in terms of your thoughts on the current state of publicity and PR practitioners. What can you forecast for the future of this industry and those working in and around it? What do you see as we continue to embark? And Kevin, I'll start with you.
What do I see for this industry? I mean, I think, I've thought about this a lot because as a publicist, when Bree talked and Bree and Joe both talked about building lists, I remember there was a time where I felt like, I can read you the list from top to bottom in terms of like who are all the important outlets that we needed to talk to. And I think as social media has evolved and become such an important factor, whether it's influencers or whether it's media outlets on social or social forward media outlets, it's really just expanded the landscape in such a way that it's really hard to know everything, see everything, pay attention to everything. But I think the fundamentals of as it only continues to grow, as it only becomes more segmented with attention being in so many different places, like you really have to think about who your target audience is, and you really, really, really have to continue to lean into relationships. Your relationships will get you to the spaces you need to get faster than you trying to somehow cast this net and capture everything that you're looking to capture. And so I just think about that. It's going to continue to become more fragmented. I think people are going to continue to really have a focus on community and really think about like the audiences that they're specifically talking to and building an affinity and relationship with them and allowing that to grow. I think a great example is the Beehive, right? Like when you look at this latest rollout and just the relationship that Beyonce has with her fans at this level in her career, she's really having a one-on-one conversation with them, right? And everybody else is kind of in on it. They hear about it, they write about it, but she seems very clearly talking to the community that knows and gets what it is that she's doing and getting them, to the website to sign up for things. Like it's really like this one-on-one relationship with fans. And so I see that really starting to grow. I think a lot of media outlets with their newsletters and things like that, they're really trying to think about how they're staying connected to their readers, but also how they diversify what they look like. Their IRL programming, their event series, they're really thinking about how to connect and reach people in different ways. So I think it's just going to continue to be more of that. But relationships are the way. I think just to stay, the fundamentals of PR is like building mutually beneficial relationships. I think that's how you stay with this current that's moving.
I love that. And it sounds like community is really starting to take a front seat in terms of how we talk to and really consume that type of media. Bree, we know that you head up multicultural media. So in terms of thinking about the future of the industry and where we are going, what's your vantage point?
I think it's more so continuing to spread the gospel that multicultural should not be an afterthought. A lot of these brands are still creating segmented budgets or silo budgets, or, it's more of a reactive situation. But I am making it my goal wherever I go in this lane to advocate that we should be thought of at inception. When the brand is brought in, when the RFP is being considered or done, multicultural needs to be weaved in. I don't care how and when and why, but it needs to be part of it, because you look at numbers of the world and just statistics that tell you about the diversity of this country and the world at large, not to mention the cultural currency of all the brands trying to tap into the cool factor, so to speak. We are leading that charge. So it is a miss majorly across major companies who are not seeing the light, both internally and through the client landscape, because it's just, there's so much money to be had there and there's so much engagement that needs to happen. So that is my goal. That's like when I have my little sign, it's like multicultural needs to be thought of now. So I think that with that being said, we're going to continue to see that. I mean, TikTok is so massive. I keep talking about them, but like TikTok is so massive. Instagram, we see that, we are the ones that over index, blah, blah, blah. So I just think that the world is going to continue to turn more digital. I think that more media outlets are going to look to more of their social channels and properties to activate for campaigns versus their .com properties. I think the editorial is leaning more digitorial, and because that's where everybody is. Everybody's getting their news from their fingertips, from their handhelds versus, scouring the .coms. And, unfortunately, the print cycle, as we all know, is slowly diminishing. So really staying ahead of that trend and that curve and understanding who are the ones that are affecting that space, which again is us. So I think that's where the industry is going to continue to trek toward. And again, I just really want to make sure that brands understand that and the importance of getting to it on a proactive basis versus a reactive, oh, we need to bring them in at the last minute.
For sure, for sure. And Joe, you're going on to lead publicity at another network. Given what Bree and both Kevin have touched upon, how do you see the future of this industry, and what are your thoughts in terms of where we're going, where we're headed?
Well, first off, I think Bree and Kevin hit on like some really important things. I think Kevin started with talking about like a target or a goal. And that is so important that I don't think people really understand. Like, yes, this show is for women, but is it for Black women? Is it for Latina women? Is it for transgender women? And then over indexing with the media that will cover that type of program, because they'll actually help you tell the story a lot better than sometimes you can even do, because they love the content they're being served. Bree said something that was also really good earlier in the conversation, but I think it's pertinent to this. It's like, we have to be nimble. We have to be flexible with the way and the ways that we execute tactics. Press junkets are going to be press junkets, but how can you make that different to where the press and your partners that you're engaging leave that experience and do a lot of the heavy lifting in a way that you never even thought about, because they just enjoy that experience so much. I think that's going to be really important. We are getting to the point where experiences matter a lot more than they did before. Like, people loved the press trips before. They loved a junket before. They loved a dinner. They loved a party. But you do them so much, and now it's like, what else? What makes this different? How does this distinguish itself from the competition? And then I think the thing that we're kind of going back to is you have to be more enterprising. And Kevin kind of hit on this when he talked about like the targets of it all. You know, trade publications are very important for proving value in a corporate structure, full stop. But there are bloggers, there are Black media in particular that move the needle on your campaigns, whether that's at a brand or a network. In a way that I don't think people really understand. I saw that at my last stop at OWN. You know, we did a lot of great work with a lot of great publications, but those Black publications move the needle and help sustain a lot of our shows, even though viewership may be down, even though people are cord cutting. We still were able to maintain and be successful in spite of those things, because Black folks were at the forefront of that conversation and writing and covering. And so those are things that I think are going to be really important as we look ahead in the industry, is realizing the importance of Black media, but also making sure we find the right Black media when we're doing that as well. So I hope that helps as well.
Yes, it does. So much good information, and really a thoughtful conversation with some real good professionals, really deep in their industry and their journeys. I want to thank you all for participating in our workshop today. Per my last email, this was great. And if you all don't have any final thoughts that you'd like to share, we'll give it back, everybody back their day. Hope they enjoyed. Hope you all enjoyed sharing with us. We really enjoyed listening to you all and hearing your stories. And this concludes our panel. Hope you join us next time. Thank you, guys.